Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's annual Food and Drink webinar on pragmatic approaches to researching export markets. My name is William Barnes-Graham, and I am the Senior Content Editor at the Institute of Export and International Trade. Thank you. Next, please. Open to Export is a free online service helping small businesses get ready to sell overseas through our step-by-step articles and guides, regular webinars, our Export Action Plan tool, and our quarterly competitions. You can find out about all of these on our website at opentoexport.com. Next. Open to Export is powered by the Institute of Export and International Trade, the UK's only professional membership body for traders, endorsed by the World Trade Organization and the International Chamber of Commerce as a small business champion, and offering a unique range of individual and business membership benefits, education and training catering for beginners through to master's degrees, and an always exciting and prestigious programme of events celebrating UK businesses' exporting achievements. Next. We will be running a live Q&A at the end of the session, and you can ask questions at any point during this webinar using the question box on the control panel to the right-hand side of the screen. Next. Today we are joined by Seema Rampersad from the British Library, who will be giving tips about how to approach market research. Nicola Thomas from the Food and Drink Exporters Association will then give sector-specific advice and an overview of support available in the sector. And she'll be followed by Leslie Batchelor from the Institute of Export and International Trade, who will tell you how to put all this research together into a clear and achievable plan. But kicking things off, over to you, Seema.
Thank you very much, William. Next. Hello, I'm Seema Rampersad. I work at the British Library's Business and IP Centre in London. This has my email if you need to contact me after, and it also has a link to our Innovation and Enterprise blog, which regularly updates entrepreneurs and businesses about business topics. Next, please. So for those of you who are not aware, the British Library is for anyone who wants to do any type of research, academic, personal, commercial. We're really here in the Business and IP Centre to help you, to support you to start to grow your business or to actually develop your business more, such as in exporting and finding new markets and finding new partners, and also a lot about market researching and webinars and workshops and one-to-ones that can help you with your exporting ideas and development of your business. Next slide, please. So, in terms of market research, Benjamin Franklin said, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. The main point is that you should do market research at all stages of your business, from starting a business to growing your business and into entering new markets, for example, with exporting. Next. Finding the right information can be really complicated. We have lots of people who come into the centre, they don't know where to start. We're here to guide them and help them. So the main thing is that, if you can't find the information that you need, you will not be fully prepared for what's coming ahead. But it's important to know that many businesses fail due to poor research. So if you prepare, you research, you understand, you're more likely to succeed. Next. You also need to find out where your customers are and if they're out there. Obviously, you might know the market here in the UK, but you need to find out if there's a market out there. So you need to research that. You need to find out where they are, who they are, where they're based, and they're just waiting for you to find them as well. Next. We're here to actually help you in that roadmap to a discovery of your market. You need to know where you're finding your customers and which locations there are, which are where they might not be, where there are gaps. It's also a route map to finding out the niches that you might be in. So the best thing to do is actually do research into all of this to help you find where you want to be and where your customers are as well. Next. So market research comes into all of this. So why do you need to do market research? You need to find out the demand for your product or service, especially if you're expanding, and you need to know where your customers are, research who they are, what sort of population are you targeting, where the customers, age groups, Are they big spenders, low income spenders? Are they young professionals? You need to find out all these things. You also need to find out if you have competitors in that market and know how the market sector is performing, and also to see what trends are about to happen or what people are actually interested in at the moment, and also what is likely to happen in the future. Next. For example, we found some research recently which told us that in the food and drink industry, you might need to know what are the main things that are opening up in the high street or what people are actually putting their money into. For example, it's been suggested that the 5 top openings are barbers, beauty salons, coffee shops and tea rooms, tobacconists and nail salons. So if you've seen these figures, if you've researched your topic, it's likely that you might want to actually spend time focusing on one of these top 5 openings. So a little bit of research can help you in the right path in terms of where you want to go in the future. Next. This slide actually is an intriguing one. It's asking you what is the number of businesses, a particular business in the UK is actually declining or shrinking, as we should say. So I know normally I would ask people here in our workshop, what do they think this is? And if we move on to the next slide, we'll find out what is actually declining. It's the number of pubs in the UK. It's declining. Okay, it might actually be declining, but it's also a shrinking market. So you might need to know how you can innovate in that sector. Next. So, for example, there's a group of hipster bars in London, who in Shoreditch, who are not just serving craft beer, but they're also serving food as well. And it's kind of move away from that sort of like traditional pub in certain parts of London. So what this fact is telling me is that you might need to actually innovate in what you're trying to do. Okay, there is a decline in market, but you need to buck the trend and actually innovate in what you're offering to your customers to make sure that you survive in that market. Next. You need to also know where you can find your customers and what do they think about you, what do they think of the offering that you're showing to them. You need to also find out how commercial your idea might be in terms of getting customers, and you also need to research what is it your customers want. Then you can figure out what you need to do going ahead. You gain an informed plan and strategy for taking your business forward if you do your research. Next. But looking at what's already published out there, it says that there are 5 closures. So pubs, obviously we knew that it was declining, and you would obviously need to innovate and find out how you can change those things within your sector by doing some more research, and how you can actually adapt to make sure that you survive in such a declining climate. Next. For example, I didn't realize some of our panelists were actually from the UK Food and Drinks Exporters website, but I did a quick search yesterday on Google looking at the news to see what was available out there for the export market for food and drinks. And I found that the top market that were for food exporters are Ireland, obviously, France, and the USA for the UK. And also told me things like, what are the top things we're spending people are actually buying, so whiskey, salmon, chocolate, and cheese. So looking very quick using Google searches, you can find out these things. Using industry experts can actually guide you in what you're planning going ahead. Next. But you also need to find out who are your competitors. What do their customers think of them? So having competitors is actually brilliant. Don't be daunted by having competitors, because they've actually done a lot of the research for you. They're already existing. They already have a clientele. It's actually useful to find out how they're structured, where they're based, and use that information to guide you. It's very useful also to research in the practicalities of setting up a business when you have competitors. You're not just creating something from scratch. You know that people are buying some product. What you're looking for is actually finding the niche within that market that represents you. Next. Okay, so you need to also predict and forecast when you're doing research. It's good to look at trends, and you need to know what's going to happen in the future, what lifestyle changes are going to happen, what are the factors that you might need to rectify. For example, this slide say that in terms of the population growth, it's going to be very large, but also you need to have new recruits by 2024. So you actually 2024 is not far away. It's only 6 years away, but it sounds a long way away. So you need to plan all these sort of things. It's telling you that curry houses might shut down in the future. So in terms of doing your market research, you also need to know what's happening now, but also what's happening in the future, so that you can actually be adaptable to the changes. Next. So there's two types of research that you can do. You can do desk research using authoritative published resources, and that equals libraries most of the time, or information repositories, or people who have a lot of data or facts on topics. Or field research, where you're actually going out and actually doing your own research, asking questions and observing and all those sort of things. So those two types of research are out there, and those are the main forms. I'm now going to talk a little bit more about desk research, how you can find out here at the Business and IP Centre, and then I'll mention also field research. Next. So this is where you do desk research, where you can do research here at the British Library in the Business and IP Centre. Next. We're also here to help you. A lot of the resources that we have are very digital. Some of you might be very familiar with it, but a lot of people who actually are starting, entrepreneurs who are just starting their idea, haven't been exposed to business information at all, they sometimes need help. And the databases that we have change all the time, so we're here to help you at the Business and IP Centre, so do ask us. Next. So we have access to a lot of market research. Some of you might be familiar with them. Our unique selling point is that we have access to them that are very, very expensive to normally have in a public library. We cover the UK and international markets. A lot of the database contain market research that is written by business analysts who understand their markets and have great insight and knowledge that's already available for you to use as desk research. And they're there to help you understand your market and your customers and the general business landscape. Next. What I also need to say to you is that in all, we have about 50 million plus pounds worth of information free in the centre. So as a library, you probably wouldn't get as much market research freely available in the UK as us in London. We do have partners across the country who will have access to market research, but I think we have the largest amount in terms of value here at the centre. Next. And all you need is a free British Library, a library reading pass to use the databases in the reading room. You need to just have two forms of ID, one with a signature and one with your address. And reader registration could give you a reader pass, which can give you access to all of these databases. Next. But what can you actually use the market research held here? So let's follow the trail of the coffee trail of actually doing some research into the coffee market. First of all, we have the drinks industry guide. Next, which shows you things like the Cobra reports, which gives you practical information on how to set up, what are the key trends in the market, what are the licenses you might need, what insurances you might need. So they're all there very practically to help you. And we also have sections in the library that covers like how to set up a coffee or a restaurant or what you need to do. We also do practical workshops on this sort of thing by a food consultant. So we have also the market research as well as the practicalities if you need to look into that. Next, please. But some of the market research mainly cover the UK market, but they do have a global perspective. For example, IBIS World here covers cafes and coffee shop in the UK, covering everything from the competitive landscape, the industry outlook, and also operational outlooks here in the UK. They tend to cover what's going on a little bit in the other markets. But the one on the right is from Global Data Online, which tells you things in other industries as well. It's the global, how often consumers of the following beverage claim to try new or different varieties. So we do have a suite of databases that cover UK as well as international markets. Next. For example, as well, the passport database is really useful. It has contains 4,500 global markets in 80 countries. I think you can get about 150 countries, but we only pay for 80 countries. And it has market research reports in all those markets. And we actually give you pages of text to take away by email we send to you. You can stay and have unlimited access in the reading room and make notes and do intensive research. But in terms of you have a limited time, you could come in and do some research, and we can give you some content to take away electronically. Next. In the passport database, the same story with regards to coffee. It tells me what the coffee market is in Ireland, and also tells me a bit about the prospects. So Cafe Society is replacing the traditional pub also in Ireland. Next. And then we have the general things such as journals held here, where if you can't find something on the databases, we do have traditional published research that you can use in the center. Next. Going on to the other point, in terms of doing your own field research, you might want to think about what is it you're going to ask your customers. So questionnaires are very useful, asking things face-to-face, by email, or even asking opinion on social media. Or you can actually walk the streets and get a feel of an area or feel of how something's selling in a pop-up store or market or things like that. Or you can actually stalk your competitors. That's a form of actually doing your field research. So you can actually find out, for example, you can go to a coffee shop in Ireland and see what people are selling, what the people are actually buying, the quality of the product that people are offering, so you can actually innovate from your competitor, and what are the busiest times people are going in there, and what type of persons are coming in to buy. So these are some of the physical things you can observe by doing field research. Next. And we also have resources in the library that can help you formulate your questionnaires in terms of actually finding out what your customers think and what they think of the market. It's sort of like a forum of opinion that you're looking for. If you ask the right questions, you might get the answers that you need. You can also target your customers, for example, with pricing of a product. You can find out whether they're thinking it's good or bad. So you can use resources in terms of building your own surveys and questionnaires to send out. Next. We also have a trade industry guide here in the British Library, which covers things such as etiquettes or even resources such as the Open to Export organizations and a lot of the government departments that support trade and industry in terms of exporting and importing. So that's available on our website as well if you want to do some research into that. Next. And I'm just going to wrap up here, but I just want to say I only had 10 minutes, so this is all I can say for now. But if you need help with your research, the Business and IP Centre has 13 libraries network across the UK, and you can go to any one of them and get a form of market research in printed forms or digital or even face-to-face help to help you. So do come back to us if you need to do market research yourself. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Seema. That was so much information there. So thank you so much for compressing what I know is often a very large presentation into that kind of smaller piece there. But that's very useful. Thank you. And now to give more of a industry kind of a focus, over to you, Nicola from FDEA.
Thanks, William, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my session on pragmatic export market research and how you can use it to effectively build sustainable exports. And that's whether you're a manufacturer who's thinking about exporting, you've got some limited experience, or you're already established in overseas markets. Next. Now, the timing of this webinar is quite fitting as we move into Q4 of 2018. in an ideal world, if you were serious about developing sustainable exports, you would be heading off to a desert island, taking stock of your performance this year, commissioning some paid research into different market and consumer groups before drawing up a robust and informed strategy in a select number of countries. However, in our experience, the reality for most of you who are either company owners juggling export with your day jobs, or even if you're an export manager in a large organisation, is that you've got so much on your plate that taking yourself off to spend quality time on your strategy with a blank sheet of paper is not going to happen this quarter or any other quarter for the foreseeable future. Additionally, very few of you have the luxury of access to any sort of budget for research. And even if you did, it's quite likely that you wouldn't be convinced it's something worth spending your money on. At the FDA, we've offered various low budget research packages to members over the years, but the uptake is always minimal. The feedback we get, even from larger organisations who could invest, is that they would just rather suck it and see in a market if a distributor is knocking on the door than spend money working out whether there is a real sustainable opportunity, even though they then admit they generally regret that decision. Next. So the idea behind today's session is to try and convince you that it's worth investing at least some time in doing some research to make informed decisions and actually try and cut through all the noise of your day job, responding to inquiries, managing distributors, etc., to make you a more effective exporter and improve your overseas sales results. For those of you who don't know the FDA, I'm going to briefly explain about us and why we know a bit about the value of international market research. I'll touch on the benefits of research to your business and then walk you through some examples where I think research can really add value to your export endeavours and where you can find totally free sources of information, particularly to help you prioritise markets, find the right distributors for your business and perfect your international sales pitch. If you've got any questions, as William said, pop them into the chat box on your screen as we go along, and we'll cover them in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Next. So the Food and Drink Exporters Association does what it says on the tin. It's the only industry association specifically for exporters. We have over 150 members of all shapes and sizes, ranging from SMEs to PLCs, and representing pretty much all product sectors. I'm delighted that so many of you are listening in today, so a special hello to you if you've taken the time to join us. We also have a bank of professional associates who are on hand to provide specific support to members, ranging from labelling to insurance and kosher certification to logistics. Next, please. The FDA is run by a team of experienced exporters, so we can understand the pain points that you go through as you expand overseas. We sit very much at the heart of the industry, representing you at government level, which is particularly important given the current Brexit environment. We're also the delivery partner for Open to Export and the Food and Drink Federation, and we're in daily contact with both overseas buyers and exporters, so we've got our finger on the pulse of the UK food and drink export community. We can facilitate direct contact for you with overseas distributors and buyers because we run the British pavilions at 15 overseas trade shows each year. We also host our own international Meet the Buyer events and produce a members directory which is circulated to embassies around the world and handed out at trade shows. One of the most valued aspects of membership is the opportunity to share experiences with and learn from each other. It's more useful than learning from us, we found. So we run a series of events, workshops and briefings to bring our community together on a regular basis. Because we're in constant contact with members, we know which markets they're targeting and what their challenges are. And one of the barriers to export which comes up frequently is a lack of understanding of the opportunities in a particular market and how to access the right distributors. Our day job as consultants helping companies to accelerate their export growth and with limited resources and budgets ourselves means we can put ourselves in your shoes when it comes to carry out effective research on a shoestring. Next, please. So what do we and our FDA members see as the benefits of doing at least some international market research? Why is it a better idea than just diving in and hoping for the best? Let's face it, many of us certainly start out selling overseas in a very ad hoc and reactive way. You receive an email inquiry from a small store in Singapore or a bar in Spain, or you meet a Belgian or Chinese importer on your stand at specialty food in the UK. And before you know it, you're busy sending out samples, working up prices, entering into long email and phone conversations, which may or may not go anywhere. Things then start to snowball, and once you begin selling overseas, it seems you would generate more inquiries which take up more of your time before you've had a chance to stop and even ask yourself whether you're actually pursuing sales in the most suitable markets for your products, or whether you're with the right partner in each country. You can easily end up exporting to 10 markets on paper, but are they really the right markets, and is shipping a few ad hoc orders a year without knowing the true potential for your products going to bring you long-term success? So ask yourself 2 questions. Firstly, how many markets can you realistically manage? There are around 200 markets in the world. And if you think about how much time and effort you're investing in the UK market, if you spend just a fraction of that time to get the same results overseas, you can't be in that many of those 200 markets and actually doing them justice. We see companies who appoint distributors and then they move on to the next country. And that just makes my heart sink, because that's when the work just starts. How many accounts can you manage to the same level as your accounts in the UK? And the only way you can do this is not by appointing the first person that comes through the door. It means you've got to find the right partner, and you've got to manage them, motivate them to get the best sales results for your products. Secondly, do you want to be proactive or reactive in your export markets? You might decide that in some key countries you will be proactive, you'll find the best fit distributors and you'll invest and support them. And in others, you'll just react if an inquiry comes in. There's no right or wrong answer, but you do need to answer the question and have a plan. And this will help enormously. For example, next week, if any of you are exhibiting at CIAL, as you know, it's an international show, you'll be meeting potential contacts from all over the world. But if you know that next year you're really going to put your efforts into the US and Spanish markets because they're where the best opportunities are, it helps you, A, have the right conversations on your stand, and B, it gives you immediate focus for your follow-up activity next Friday when you get back to the office. You'll probably have heard me say before that every distributor you meet will tell you that they're the largest, the best, the one supplying the major retailers. No one will tell you they're hopeless, but they want your product anyway. So without doing your homework, how do you know you've got the right one for your business and your brand? You've only got one chance to get it right, as they are going to represent you and your brand in the market, and they're going to be the face of your organization. It's really important that you find the best fit partner for you, and research can play a huge part in that. Fast forward then to the moment when you're having buyer conversations in the USA and Spain. This is a major area where we found you can create credibility and command respect by doing your homework up front. When we run Meet the Buyer events and suppliers have 20 minutes to chat to the buyer, we see companies who are so keen to tell the buyer all about their products and their companies that they churn out their standard presentation without actually considering their audience. We've worked with hundreds of companies in Wales and Scotland to help them prepare for Meet the Buyers, using research to really tailor the conversation. And the feedback has always been that buyers are so impressed with the knowledge suppliers have about their customers, and they're able to have an informed discussion rather than being bombarded with a generic presentation. Research is also helpful to help you build credibility with your colleagues if you're in a larger organisation, as you can justify why you need budget to visit a particular market and pursue opportunities with a certain distributor. And if you're a smaller company looking for investment, having a plan with your growth ambitions substantiated by hard facts is a very powerful tool in your pitch kit. So hopefully you can start to see how selective research can help you save time, keep you focused, but ultimately get you better and more sustainable results. That's the preaching bit over with. Next, please. So how can you fast track to success using research and get the information you need to make informed decisions? Let's make a couple of assumptions about you as a food and drink manufacturer. You've got sales in a range of markets with assorted distributors or a pile of inquiries from different markets around the world. You literally have no money to invest in research, which is fine. However, if you don't have money, you will need to be prepared to invest either some time of your own or find someone who can invest their time for you. If you don't have the funds, there has to be a compromise somewhere, obviously. Also, the information you're going to need is generally not all nicely in one place. So pulling it together into usable data is a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle, and you've got to pull down information from multiple sources to build up a usable picture. However, I would say that even experienced exporters can waste an awful lot of time responding to and pursuing leads that don't go anywhere. So I'm sure if you were to spend that time doing some homework instead, you will save a lot of time and effort in the long run. Next. So the first area where you can reap the benefits of doing some research is in identifying your priority export markets. If you look at your existing export countries or have a range of potential markets in view, how can you pick out the ones offering the best scope for further sales development or to target from scratch? This is a really simple grid, but I would draw up a short list of countries. This is obviously easy if you have existing sales, as you've got a ready-made list, but in light of Brexit, if they're all currently in Europe, do add in some non-EU options too. If you're starting out, you could look at where your inquiries are coming from, where your competitors are selling, and the UK's top export markets. Then populate the grid with criteria which are relevant to and of importance to your products, as these will be different if you're selling energy drinks to sporty millennials, luxury confectionery for gift giving, or private label frozen vegetables. You might even want to weight them if a particular criterion is a showstopper. So examples of relevant criteria might include the overall population. If you have a mass market volume product, you need to find markets with lots of people in them. If you have a niche product, maybe it's not so important. The population size and split. What's the population for your target demographic? For example, where are the millennials, the expat populations, the single person households, children? Where are the people? What are the levels of urbanisation and the population of key cities? This is important for distribution. It may mean you can focus on a particular region or a city of a larger country rather than tackling the whole country at once. For example, if you've got a health product, California, which has a high concentration of health-focused consumers, has a population of 39 million. And consumers in urban areas tend to be more open to new products and follow trends more closely. Where's the money? Bear in mind that even mid-range products in the UK may command a premium in overseas markets. So where is GDP growing? Which age groups have the highest net income per capita? Fill in the grid and then compare it to the UK, which is obviously a market you should know well, just to give you an idea of the relativity of each market. Next. So apart from going to the British Library, where are some of the free sources of information you will need to build up a picture of the best countries to target? The unlikely sounding CIA World Factbook is a good place to start because it provides consistent information on people, government, the economy, communications for every country in the world. The World Bank Data Bank is a collection of development indicators such as GDP growth forecasts, which are compiled from officially recognised international sources. So it presents really current and accurate global development data, and it includes national, regional and global estimates. Forbes Best Countries to Do Business in rankings. Forbes looks at the best countries for business by rating about 140 countries on 11 different factors, including taxation, innovation, trade freedom and red tape. It's helpful in assessing risk because it's a lot easier, obviously, to collect a bad debt from Berlin than it is from Bombay. The Legatum Prosperity Index is an annual ranking based on a variety of factors, including wealth, economic growth, education, personal well-being and quality of life. And as Seema found when she was doing her homework, the Food and Drink Federation provide a half-yearly snapshot of the top 20 UK export markets, which gives you a good general indicator of demand for British products. Next, please. So having established which markets look like they have some promise on the face of it, a deeper delve can help you assess how attractive a country really is for you as a company. Look at factors which are specific to your product category. For example, is there already an established market for your product? What are the current forecast consumption levels of tea or crisps? Do your target channels exist? For example, if you're targeting coffee shop chains, even in Europe, they're not really prevalent. It's mainly independent cafes. It doesn't mean you need to rule it out, but it might be more complex to access those independent cafes than having chains at your disposal. Are your competitors selling in the market? If not, is there a good reason? Do they really have a sales presence, or are they just shipping a few cases a year like you are? What are the pricing levels? And if you look at the retail prices and work back to your cost price, can you actually make any money? What's the impact of global trends such as convenience, free from, organic, or premiumization in the country? Happily, you'll often find that if a trend like gluten-free is plateauing or reaching maturity in the UK, it could well just be turning mainstream in other markets. So there's a massive opportunity there to capitalise on that and extend the life cycle of your existing products. What about cultural, social and religious factors? Will these affect consumption? Are there gift-giving occasions, such as Singles' Day in China, which is absolutely massive? Thanksgiving, is there a need for kosher or halal products? And then there's trade barriers and regulations. How difficult is it going to be for you to export to that market? These aren't necessarily showstoppers, but you need to be aware of them. You need to know about import tariffs and quotas, trade agreements, the stability of regulations. In China, for example, the regulations can literally change while your products are on the water. In the US, you need to register your product before you can even send samples. And are your ingredients accepted? We've worked recently with a company who made chocolates with glitter on the top of them, and have got quite some way down the road looking at the US market before they realised that the glitter was actually banned in the US. So it's a good case there for doing your homework beforehand. So as you can see, by answering these questions, you'll start to get some more meaningful indicators around opportunities. Or, on the other hand, you might pick up clues that a market you thought had some promise is not so attractive. Next, please. So when we come to free resources, if you want to piece together enough meaningful information to understand how attractive a market is for your product category, you're going to need to turn detective here and consult multiple sources in order to build up a meaningful picture. But here are some good places to start. Statista.com amalgamates statistics from thousands of sources and brings them into one place. The good news is that you can access some food and drink industry data with a free subscription. I was looking this morning and I found the 2017 per capita consumption of beer in the US, for example, all there for the taking. But the bad news is that inevitably the chart you really want is only available if you pay for the premium service. Then, as Seema mentioned, the global research databases such as Euromonitor, Mintel, Global Data, these are paid for databases. And you can obviously go to the British Library and access them there. But even if you just type in your category and the country into the database search facility, for example, savoury snacks in China, you'll get the report synopsis, which can give you some headline trends. And these providers also do periodically publish free reports on global trends, so it's worth registering with them just for those. If you belong to a trade association, such as British Frozen Food Federation or the Soil Association, do ask them if they have any market data, and also try contacting their in-market counterparts. I found a great report this week on the global organic market on the Spanish Soil Association equivalent website in English as well. A great resource for getting to grips with the regulatory environment in non-EU markets is the EU's Market Access Database, whose website address has got the rather unfortunate acronym of MAD. You put in your SIC code, which is your standard industrial classification code, and the non-EU country you want to research, say Canada or South Korea, and you can call up tariffs, duties, regulations, trade barriers, and free trade agreement information at the touch of the button. To see what your UK competitors are doing, obviously look at their websites, but to see who you'd be competing with locally, you can check them out from the comfort of home by going online shopping. Most retailers have online shopping websites, and using the power of Google Translate, you can enter your product category, such as cheese, crisps, beer, and see all the brands that are on sale. This is also very useful for checking prices and packaging formats. Next, please. As I said earlier, you're only as good as your distributor in a market. They represent you and they represent your brand. Apart from physical distribution, they offer access to contacts, they offer knowledge, they provide customer service in areas you can't. So if you have a poor fit distributor who doesn't have the same objectives as you, it can derail your relationship and sales. If they mess up, it's your reputation at stake. So this is another area where time spent researching all the options available is time well spent. So firstly, identify your end customers. Are they the multiples? Are they health food stores, cafes, hotels, delis? And this will help determine the type of distributor you should be looking for. Obviously, the best way to do this is to go to the market and see the outlets for yourself. But as we're assuming this has to be no-cost research for the purposes of the exercise, look online, try research providers such as Kantar and Euromonitor, go to the British Library, look at international hotel chains and health food stores and see if they have a presence in the market and how many outlets they have. If you're lucky enough to be in Wales or Scotland, contact the Welsh Government or Scottish Development International, as they have support schemes to provide this information. And in England, it's worth approaching DIT or the commercial sections of the British Embassy in market, although support there might be chargeable. Profile your ideal distributor. What characteristics must they have for you? What geographic coverage do they need to have? Do they need to be supplying Monoprix? Do they need to be working in 5-star hotels? Do they carry adjacent or complementary categories to yours? What would be a bonus? Is having English-speaking staff necessary? Once you've got your profile, draw up a short list of candidates. By all means, if you've got inquiries on your desk, you've got leads from a show, then add them into the mix, but don't rely on them solely. If you can make an exception to the no budget rule, and it's a country nearby such as France, do go to the market. Just cruising supermarket aisles, as Seema said, is great research on so many levels, not least because you can see who key importers are from the back of packs. You can ask non-competing manufacturers who they recommend, or you could even put a shout out on social media, especially LinkedIn, which also has groups just for people who are involved in food and drink distribution around the world. Once you've shortlisted, say, 4 or 5 potential companies, you will need to go and conduct an in-market beauty contest. But prior to that, send each candidate a list of questions you want them to answer. We typically ask around 30 questions, including market information, but make the questions relevant to your needs. The answers are always useful, even if you don't go forward with those candidates. Next, please. The final area where I'd really advocate doing some research is in preparation for your end customer conversations. This could be with overseas retail buyers, hotel managers, restaurant owners, other manufacturers. As I said before, this is where the feedback we get from talking to buyers confirms research really pays off. Rather than giving your standard presentation to everyone, if you can understand your buyer, the global trends influencing their market, their customers and those customers' needs, it makes for a really powerful and compelling conversation. If you followed the previous steps, you'll already have plenty of this information to hand, but tailor it further if you can by researching the organisation. And a good start point here is to look at the company's mission and values and draw out the key elements which fit with your own organisation. And finally, when you use any research as part of your material, always ask yourself, so what? To really ensure that you get to a point where it's meaningful and relevant to your audience. Next, please. So as we've gone along, I've indicated where you can find free research resources, but you do need to commit some time to consulting them. However, there are also plenty of ways you can save yourself time, which you might have forgotten about or not considered, by reaching out to your network, your colleagues' networks, and your company's memberships to get the information you need. You may find, for example, that local colleges, universities, and even the Chartered Institute of Marketing students are often looking for projects as part of their studies. So could you offer them a project to benefit yourself? This is just a list of some of the other places that you can look for people to help you, such as your professional advisors. Some of the banks, for example, have trade portals that you can subscribe to for free for a limited time. I've already mentioned your local government organisations. Support varies, but if you're in Wales or Scotland, you're the lucky ones. Is your company a member of the Chamber of Commerce, who have an excellent overseas network? If you or any of your colleagues are members of this Federation of Small Business or the Institute of Directors, they can also help. I frequently forget that one of the benefits of IOD membership is that you can consult them 26 times a year, and they have got a great research facility, and obviously because they know what they're doing, they can get you a lot of information in a short space of time. And the final slide, please. So that brings my session today to an end. I hope that I've helped you recognise the long-term benefits of at least doing some research to get better export results, that I've shown you where to focus your efforts and how to find out useful information without any money, and why time spent researching rather than firefighting and being reactive is time well spent in the long run. I look forward to answering your questions, but if we don't get through them all, or if you've got anything you want to ask me offline, my contact details are there on the screen. Thank you very much, and I'll hand you back to William.
Thank you, Nicola. Loads of great information there, and we work with the FDA kind of very regularly, and can I definitely advocate for the support they bring, as well as the FDF and DEFRA too. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over quickly to Leslie to talk about how to put this all together into a clear and coherent plan. Leslie.
Thank you, William. If we can go on to the next slide. This is the first part where I'm just going to show off a little bit, because actually Open to Export, which is the Institute of Export and International Trade's website that's set up to help new and inexperienced businesses get into new markets, actually won a prize, and we became the ICC, that's the International Chamber of Commerce, and the World Trade Organization's Small Business Champion 2 weeks ago. And we're really excited about this because actually they only awarded it to 3 organisations. And here you'll see a photograph of myself, Arnie Milkin, who is our young president, who is a brilliant young man as far as qualifications are concerned, and the Deputy Director General Yi of the World Trade Organization. So it was a great event for us. I'll tell you a little bit more about how this worked, because we actually ran a competition that I'm going to talk to you about in a bit more detail now. May I have the next slide, please? So the importance of having a plan. So Seema and Nicola have just explained how vital it is to know about which market you're selling to, you know, why you're going to sell to that market, which routes are best for it, and, you know, most effective for your business. And using the various resources that they've already mentioned, you need to start thinking about having clear goals and setting a strategy that you're going to put into a plan so that you know how you're going to adopt it. I think it's all part of this premise that if you're going to eat an elephant, you can't start at the beginning, you have to take bite-sized chunks. So if we go on to the next slide, you'll see that we have this wonderful website that contains articles, webinars, blogs, excuse me, everything that you're going to, oh, excuse me, everything that you're going to need on your journey. And what we've also done is broken the journey down into 5 main steps. And of course, the first one is getting started, and most of you will already be started. The second one is selecting a market. The third one is reaching customers, which is, you know, marketing and how you're going to get to them. The fourth one is all about pricing and getting paid. And then we focus in on delivery and documentation and compliance issues. But what we do have is within the articles that we have on the site, which number around about 2,000 or more, we have access to using those articles to create an export action plan. Next slide. And within this export plan, you'll find that there's an interactive tool. There's a chap there in the purple there who is a video, and he'll explain to you all about the 5 export steps. Each time he comes up, he explains what we're going to ask you, how you're going to work through this. And you'll notice down at the bottom, there's a section that explains what the section will cover, but it also has on the right-hand side useful resources that you can use to do that. You answer the questions and then click on next task. So next slide, please. So as you work through, as you get to the end of each section, there's a summary, and then you'll find yourself in a circumstance where you can set actions. We suggest about 3 main actions that you'll find, and you can see here we've put, you know, contact distributors, and there's a drop-down date and you can start looking at what date that you can use and how you can move that forward. This all becomes part of a PDF plan that actually will help you understand what the timescales are, what you need to do, and get everything in chronological order. Next slide, please. This is an example of the report and how it will look. And what we find is that this report, once finished, gives you a summary for this export strategy. It also allows you to actually keep all your ideas about the documentation, the planning, the marketing, all in one document, as I say, in chronological order. So you can take it to your bank, you can take it to your board, you can take it to any of your advisors, so they can see exactly what you have in mind. And once you've started that, you start to take onus and ownership of your plan. It becomes a very useful document indeed. Next slide. We do have an elaborate selecting a market using a very similar matrix to the one that Nicola outlined, but in this case what we do is we try and get everyone to think about 3 main markets that they may have opportunities to work in, and start thinking about their own abilities to operate in that market. It's exactly the same as with Nicola's matrix. It gives you an idea as to what the considerations are. In this case, this is helping you to understand what you need to do and where perhaps you need to enhance your skills to be able to find the new market. In this case, this is telling us that we're going to go to South Korea. Next slide, please. So we also have a whole section on deciding your route to market, but I have to say I think Nicola and Seema did adequately well on all this, so I'm not going to start doing this. Next slide, please. Most importantly, what we do offer is the chance of actually giving a whole pack of information about the new market that you've decided on. We will run a free export strategy consultation session to go through your export action plan. There's unlimited access to our technical helpline, which again is one of those fabulous lines that you can actually email any question you want to it. We do talk on the phone, but we actually find it much easier to understand the technical issues once we've seen them in writing. You can access a wide range of our doing business guides. If you look on our website, you'll find that there's a huge range of those. There are bespoke market research carried out by our team, preferential member rates on the world-renowned training courses, and a full communication package to keep you up to date. And what we're saying to you here is very cheeky, but trust us, because the WTO and the International Chamber of Commerce do. I'm handing back to William.
Thank you, Leslie. And yeah, as Leslie says, we are here to help, and as with the British Library and FDEA, we do plenty of that, and we've got plenty of resources you can use. Next slide, please. So yeah, thank you to Leslie, Nicola and Seema for some great advice and tips. We're now going to open the floor for questions. So we haven't got loads of time for questions, but if you do have an urgent question, you can put it in through the control panel on the right-hand side, and we can take some of these questions offline afterwards as well. The first question I'm going to put to Nicola, and that's a question around what is the most effective way of communicating to reach out to distributors, and kind of how does this vary per country as well? So how can you reach distributors? Nicola.
Thanks, William. We were recently in Spain with a distributor who has got in excess of 2,000 SKUs, and he said, there's no way that I can keep up with my existing suppliers, let alone think about taking on new ones. And the sad fact is, it's a question of whoever shouts loudest is going to get heard. So I think, as a general rule, if you think how long it takes you to get perhaps working with a distributor in the UK, it's going to take a lot longer in general overseas. And I think you've got to approach it from, attack it from all angles. It's a slow burn. Start in the traditional way by obviously identifying the right person, sending samples, send an email, but definitely don't rely on email. I think there's no substitute for picking up the phone and making a nuisance of yourself, and doing what the Spanish distributor said, which is making yourself heard. And I think there are things you can also be doing in the meantime. every time you've got something to say to a distributor, find a reason to communicate with them, even if it's not a hard sell. So if you've got a new product, or you've got a press release, a newsletter even that you send to your UK distributors, just keep communicating with them and just keep being a pain. It will probably be the best advice I could give.
Thank you. And we've had a question in, Nicola, drawing on a point that you mentioned in your presentation, which is the market access database. With the UK imminently, potentially, who knows, leaving the EU, do you know if there's going to be a UK equivalent, or is that something which is still up for debate at the moment?
I don't know is the answer to the question. In fact, we've been trying to find out so that we could keep our members up to speed on that. Maybe when we do, we can, via you, communicate that out to people who've been listening today.
No, thank you. And Leslie, is that the same kind of our end as well? Is that something which we just don't know yet?
We don't know for sure at the moment, but the only other thing is that we do know that organisations that UNTAG have sets of this type of information. So we are keeping a watching brief on this, absolutely. I was told by the government that they were going to do that, but I don't really know whether they understood how large that project was.
Okay, so one of those we'll wait and see ones, I'm afraid.
I'm afraid so.
And a question for Seema, just from Angela, who's asking a little bit more information about how people can access the resources at the British Library. Seema.
Right. Okay, hi. Yeah, so the resources within the British Library, unfortunately, you can't access them remotely. The databases are bound by licenses and terms and agreements and stuff like that. So you have to be physically in the Business and IP Centre in London to use the ones I've mentioned. We don't give remote access, and you need to come into the reading room because our events are, you don't need a reader's pass, but if you want to use the databases and research resources, you need to have a reader's pass, which is free to obtain, but you need to provide 2 forms of ID, one with your signature and one with your address. And the reader registration team is on the lower ground floor of the British Library. You just say to them, I'm here to do some business research. It used to be a little bit snobby, where you had to have an academic reason and so on to use the library about 10 years ago, but that all changed once the Business and IP Centre came about. We realized that entrepreneurs can, don't need to have an academic background and so on, so you could just come in and say you want to do business research, and we're a lot more open than we used to be. I used to be the end user at that time, so I knew how it was as well. So as I said, the research resources, you need a reader's pass, but we also run events. So we'll probably have like a workshop on how to set up and run a coffee bar, or how to find exporters. Occasionally we run those sort of specific workshops, but you'll have to check our events page for workshops or expert advice from ourselves or our partners.
Thank you. And yes, in terms of the follow-up messaging, we'll include links to FDEA and the British Library's events and resources as well, so you've got everything you need. Fortunately, in a sense, we've run out of questions, which is just as well because it's been a long webinar today. So on that note, I think it's probably time for me to thank Seema, Nicola, and Leslie once again for their presentations and their answers. Next slide, please.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Cool. Next slide, please. So it's now the autumn, and as ever, we've got plenty going on over the next couple of months. The Institute of Export and International Trade has 2 World Trade Summits coming up, including the centrepiece of the programme in London on November 1st, and the last regional summit in Coventry on November 21st. Our World Trade Summits feature some of the leading experts in international trade and are also great networking events in which you can share learnings and kind of advice around international trades. So you can register for those at export.org.uk/events. And we are also running a joint workshop with Nicola at the FDEA on finding, appointing, managing and motivating distributors overseas. We have a save for date for that on January 16th, and more info about that will soon be available on export.org.uk/training. Next slide, please. We're also keen to highlight several of the great events and workshops being run in the food and drink sector by FDEA and other trade associations. And this includes the FDEA Network Forum on December 12th, a key annual industry event with which food and drink exporters should definitely consider going to. And there will also be many workshops, including the Export Logistics and Risk Management session in November, and the opportunities in the Nordics workshop in January, listed on the slide here. Info about these and many more can be found on the FDEA's website, and we've also set up a blog post on Open to Export with some links to all the food and drink sector events, which will be of interest to you. Next slide, please. And our next webinar will be on raising export finance using the value of an invoice, and that's on November 27th. That will be with Bibby Financial Services and should again be a very practical and useful session for new exporters looking to bridge potential cash flow gaps. You can find sign-up details for all of our future webinars at opentoexport.com/webinars. Finally, as always, please do take our exit survey to let us know what you thought of today's webinar and to give us any suggestions for improvements or future topics. But for now, goodbye.